guys, welcome. So if you're new to our channel, I'm Robyn.
I'm Victor.
And back in 2015, we took our 5 kids, sold off almost everything we owned, and downsized into a Class C RV. And now for 4 years, we travel in that. Now we travel in this one. Much more space. In this video, we're going to show you what exactly it costs monthly for us to live in an RV, and talk about what it costs to live in an RV if it's in a Class C, or talk about the difference in the expense if you live in a fifth wheel. And I'm going to be talking about how you can save up to downsize your life so you can start living your life. Now, in our channel, we share a lot of great things. You know, over the last 6 years, we've traveled all over the world, making these incredible memories. And Victor's a personal trainer. I'm a mindset coach. So on this channel, we integrate not only RV living, mindfulness, mindset, health, fitness, and adventures. All the things you can do from
and soon hiking. To come, we're going to get the kids out here, and so you could see that we're kind of a team that's all contributing to this, and we lead the way with our children, and they're going to share with you their insights.
Absolutely, absolutely. This week, so over the last couple of weeks, Victor and I have been sharing talks about self-limiting beliefs that we struggle with, and why it's been sometimes hard to embrace this lifestyle, because as amazing as it is, some of the problems you take from living in a house, you can easily carry over to living in an RV. In fact, they kind of get worse when you put stress on them. So if that's something you're worried about downsizing to an RV, like one spouse doesn't want you, one does, you definitely should check the last couple of weeks of our videos. For this week, now those of you who have followed along those videos and really liked it, I encourage you to still watch this week's, because even if you don't think you're going to want to live in an RV, we're still going to share some insightful tips, even for just life in general. But this week, we are going to focus specifically on RV living, the cost, what type of RV, and you know, a lot of the common questions people have for saving up, because, you know, now is the time. Now is the time to absolutely take control of your life and maybe downsize so you have options. You don't want to get cornered in 2021. You want to be able to be free and have options.
Or maybe you're just tired of sort of the traditional rat race and think to yourself, you know, I really love being outside. Like, to me, just being out here does wonders for my cells and my being. And so maybe you need to get outside, but you need to change where you're inputting yourself. You know, I talked to my sister earlier this week. She talked about how important it was for her to get in the sun. And so she spends more time outside of her house than inside her house. And so it brought up some questioning for her.
All right, so let's get started. Before we get started, make sure you like it. Okay. I know we can't take comments because we have kids on our channel, so you're welcome to email us any comments or anything you want us to talk about that we haven't covered. Make sure you subscribe, and most importantly, tell your friends about us, because I think we do have something that could really help change the world this year. Cost to live in an RV. Okay, so Victor's just pretty much going to check out in a few minutes. 1, because he has a client, and 2, because he doesn't really like the budgeting part. Maybe?
Well, I do have to say this. I think it's important in our relationship. I developed real early on to be the workhorse of our business early on. I did all the man hours as Robyn was pregnant and raising children. And so it made a whole lot of sense for that almost 20 years. Like, look, I'll handle that man hours of creative energy and the programming, and you just handle this side, because you're at home, you can handle that, and actually send out the emails to keep the business going. And so I disconnected from that budgeting for a long time, and what it created was a false sense of security. Truthfully, I think we had to have these difficult talks as you go into an RV. For me, I thought we're poor. And Robyn's like, well, actually, we're sitting much better. It's just you don't know the numbers. So let me show you the numbers. And when I realized that, I was like, oh, yeah, this kind of feels light. You know, I have abundance of people that come in and like, God, I'm feeling really tense. I'm like, I need to do the right exercise. And I go, okay, well, yeah, let's do some exercise. But what other tension are you holding on? So that's a little more insight into what.
For sure. And it actually goes back with like limiting beliefs that we talked about. Victor hates money. He grew up not with a lot of money, so he hates talking about money. He doesn't think about money. And so if you can stick around to the end of this video, yeah, I'm going to tell you a huge money secret that has made all the difference. It's basically made it so I get everything I want in life. The problem is, I'm going to save it to the end. What the one
hang in
problem
there.
is, and it's tied to that secret. So stick around. So let's talk about RVs first. Number one thing is you got to figure out what's going to be the cost of my RV. Now, way back, 2012, we opened a business. I was only 20 years old. We were dating at the time, and I said, I was working for the city of Coronado. I'd started their program, and I was like, God, I'm not getting paid enough, so I'm going to go in and ask for a raise. They should give me 30% of what I'm bringing in because I completely run this program, started it.
Sure.
And of course, they laughed at me, so I looked at Victor. I'm like, hey, you've never taught gymnastics. Why don't we just go open our own gymnastics facility? He's like, I love you. Kind of like travel with RVs still. I just love you. Will you include me? This is awesome. And so it was awesome. We opened our own business. I was 20. We had no money. We took sledgehammers to knock down walls to get the
And most
place.
of the time it was just kicks and shakes.
And so we went that route, and we opened the business, but I didn't pivot when I should have. I was too busy having kids. I wasn't thinking as dynamically as I do now. And so we got to a point where we should have expanded, like hired out, kept the business, but
Sure.
we didn't. And so
And I was too stubborn enough to I don't know, I have to have quality control of every single thing.
all your failures become like your lessons,
you're
and they're
learning.
valuable. So we went eventually into opening another business closer to where we live because the commute
Thinking.
in San Diego was good. But again, we were not intentional. Victor did not sit down with me and say, like, this is my dream to have it. It was, again, one when I said, hey, we should do this, assuming he'd be like, yeah, let's do this. And we opened another business, and it was failing really early on. And the passion just wasn't, the intention was not there. The desire to create something was not there. So we ended up having to declare bankruptcy to get out of that. That was probably the really best thing that could have happened to me, because I was in this mentality that so many people are kind of stuck in, where it's like, well, interest rates are so low. Well, I can just borrow money so easily. And it's true, you can. You absolutely can have these really low payments on an RV. I just chose not to. Now, we were partially forced. We couldn't get a loan. But part of me, within a year of having that bankruptcy and no debt, we decided we are not accumulating debt ever again, because there was a sense of freedom that I didn't realize was so powerful. I'm the person I am today, and like can get on camera and can be like
this,
go like live your dreams, because I was forced in that situation that I didn't realize was valuable. And so to only have to make enough money to eat and to then have options in your shelter and where you go, because this is like the best thing in the world. A lot of people might not think it's the best thing in the world. For me, it's the best thing in the world. It's definitely taken time for Victor because of the fact that there's limiting beliefs that we went through that, like, but if I don't have a house, I have no status to show for my
achievement.
Okay.
Yeah.
So cost of an RV, we decided to do it cash based. We first bought our very first, in that bankruptcy, we had bought a Class A that was
a lemon. It was lemon. It was a lemon.
lemon.
It was a lemon. It kept having problems.
And that was before a bankruptcy. And so kind of luckily, when the business got cleared, we just let go of we let go of our house in that. We let go of our, our house. It was ridiculous. Yeah, we might have had equity and sold it eventually. In fact, if you have a house right now, you probably are really smart if you make the transition now. But that's just my 2 cents. So we got rid of that Class A, which was kind of a gift, because as much as I liked having, when we talk about which RV, I think tomorrow we'll do which RV you should buy, but the Class A would not have served us the way that the Class C did. And so I didn't really want a Class C, but Victor was like, really like, I want a Class C. Oh wait, before we went from the A to the C, cleared that out with the bankruptcy, we bought cash for a fifth wheel. We had a 30-foot Attitude, no slides, just total for desert. We were desert rats, and just to take our quads out, and that was great, except then you have the cost of the truck, and we all had cash, so we ended up buying kind of an old truck. Well, we still have it was a different old truck, but an older truck. So then you have the cost of like repairs. That's the part of that. So if you're going to go with a trailer, you have to think, okay, well, I've got the cost of the trailer, but I've also got a cost of a truck, and I've got the cost of repairs. So we actually managed to save up enough to keep that trailer in 2015. And we bought cash for a Class C because Victor's like, well, if we're going to live, I had only said we were going to live in our Class C for 5 months. You'll have to watch another video about where we decided that to just keep going after those 5 months were up. But I said, well, it's just 5 months. And Victor, our compromise was like, well, I don't want to tow that fifth wheel. I don't like, this truck is a pain. It always breaks down. Like, we're not going to do that. So we got a Class C. We used our fifth wheel to store the stuff that we thought we were going to use again. So one of your expenses, if you decide to live in an RV, is to think about, like, are you storing things? My current storage bill right now is $1,500 because that's what I pay in rent to store stuff in a house that I think we've only spent 5 days this month in.
Yeah.
5 days last month, maybe.
I don't even know if it makes sense for us, but you can take that into account.
That's going to be my last
store in
secret.
Southern California, you're probably paying
$300.
Yeah, $300.
So if you need to store things, along the way, so we had that trailer for storage, and then we eventually sold that trailer so that it could fund part of our Europe trip. And then we downsized, we got rid of some of the stuff we stored and put it in a free trailer that my dad had, so it didn't cost us any money. And honestly, that stuff sat there still for 5 years. I haven't touched it. Well, we touched a little bit of it.
She talks about getting that, we got to get that couch. I'm like, really? You want me to go into...
The point, so think about that. When you downsize into an RV, storage, based on which RV you choose. Most RVs, a big thing to know is, like, we've always bought older RVs, used RVs. Our Class C was about, I want to say $30,000.
Just a little tidbit, let me interject here, just a little tidbit. You can get relatively new RVs from rental companies. Scan the rental companies because they always have to update their lines. They're trying to be competitive. So we got our Class C. It was relatively new, had high miles, but they took care of it from a rental company that we got in Arizona.
Can't promise everyone's like this, but that RV was 82,000 miles when we got it in 2015, and it was about 30,000, and it has 150,000 miles now, and I kid you not, we've changed the oil like 5 times. That's it. Probably the air filter once or twice. The thing will sit and starts right up instantly. It is amazing. If you've seen the look on our YouTube channel, our RV got in a car accident, our RV got wrecked. Like, it did. It got totaled by the insurance because it got rear-ended, but it still starts, so we still travel in it occasionally. It's about on its last leg though now. But
it is, but it's
well.
been an amazing vehicle, and that's just a little tidbit that you can go scour.
Cost of an RV. Now, this one we got for a little under 30,000, and for a brand new open range like that, you're talking $80,000. It's not, I don't take pictures of it on the inside and put it on Instagram because it's just not that beautiful, but it serves a purpose. And I
think it's awesome.
I love it. Actually, I love it. I just wish it was white inside. And eventually we'll get another one. It's just, we don't, the world's, I feel like buying a new RV right now is not the smartest thing to do. So you can have something, the point being, like, for $30,000, you have options. Okay, now a lot of you probably, $30,000, that's still a lot of money. There's probably going to be some really, really good buying opportunities in the next 6 months, I think. So, save up and be ready to one of the things with this one is we were in San Diego at the time, and I was looking on RV Trader on everywhere in the U.S. We even got this share. That I was, go.
Yeah, the tidbit here is that, we're originally from Southern California. If you look for a trailer, a fifth wheel or a trailer or an RV in state, you're going to pay a lot more. Robyn found
maybe not so much now.
Well, maybe not so much, but I still think other states are going to provide you with a better opportunity. So scour it, just like Robyn said, and that'll probably save you $10,000 at least, I feel like.
Yeah.
Okay, so keep that one. You wrote that one down.
Again, and so when we got this, we did have to get a truck. We rolled the dice and ended up getting a 03 Ford. It was the year. In fact, I can't pivot it for a second, but it was the year that that switched from the 7.3 to 6.0, right, where the injectors were a problem. We have not had trouble with the injectors yet. We have had to do.
But she doesn't let me drive it.
If we watch the videos, we have had a couple issues with it. They weren't like super serious, but I'm also kind of frugal about that stuff. And my dad's really good fixing vehicles or knows what's wrong with them. So I tend to just call him. Like, he's like, well, if it runs, just keep going. And I kid you not, Victor turns the check engine light on all the time, or he did when he was allowed to drive it. And now it doesn't turn on. And a lot of times when it turns on, it just eventually turns off. I kid you not, your body is the same thing. If you don't overreact with stuff and you just keep putting just use it. It's kind of like my truck. If I just run it, it tends to just run right. If it sits too long, it sits in the cold, things like that. So you're just like your body, if you just put in good food and just use it every day, like exercise, lift things, it'll work. It ends up working, which that'll be in the healthcare section. So number 1, storage costs. You got your RV now. We'll also do a video this week on what to keep when you downsize to an RV. Step 3, campground. So this is a big expense. I know a lot of people who have the mentality that I'm going to downsize to an RV to keep my cost of living lower. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
I just don't operate that way. And so it's not my goal to downsize to an RV. It was my goal to find the most affordable RV I could to go live my dreams and do the things I love doing every day, as opposed to how can I make my life as cheap as possible. So there's very much intention behind what RV we choose or what the cost of our monthly RV is.
I think you have to decide. It's important that you decide that, especially with your partner or your family, before you get into it.
We've done this for 6 years, and it's only this year that Victor's finally gets to be more intentional. Well, you get to be more intentional in your days.
Right.
Because you were that workhorse who just wanted to grind out.
Right. And then it also depends on, our family is rather large. So we would fill gray water and black water a lot faster than the average person. So boondocking, sometimes it's good, but sometimes for us it creates some limitations.
Okay, so I'm going to go through what he means by boondocking and all the different options if you have to go address clients. So he's got to go to work.
Digital nomad.
So campgrounds, you have a couple options. Big thing is, and I'm talking as if you know nothing about RVing, so you have some ideas. You can either get full hookups. That means you have tubes connected to your gray water, your sinks, and your black water, your toilets. Okay, and then you get water connected to the city line, and you're going to have electricity also. And depending, this needs a 50 amp, needs more power in the electricity. When we had our Class C, it's 30 amp. Not all campgrounds have both options, so it's important to know when choosing. For a long time, we chose two different. So you can have that, or you can have limited partial hookups, meaning that typically just means no sewer.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes it means no water, but you'll have electricity. If you have partial, you're guaranteed you have electricity. Or you can dry camp. Now, some campgrounds are dry camping, and I guess the benefit of that for someone would be that enjoy your work. The benefit of that is that you get to have a pit toilet, or especially if you're a van lifer and you don't have a toilet, and we'll get into that when we do which RV you should choose. But to me, that's something I would just not compromise on. I don't like tent camping because I don't want. We did that a lot when we traveled, and I just hated the feeling I have to get out of the tent and go find a place to go to the bathroom. It's just no. That was my drawing the line point. So when you pick a campground, what your campground cost is going to be, a lot of times if you're a full-time RVer, you want to look for an RV park that has full hookups, and then on top of it, you usually get a different rate if you're paying per day, a little cheaper if you're paying weekly, and significantly cheaper when you're paying by the month. I mean, it's to the point that it's almost like you're paying, if it's normally $60 a night for one night, then usually your monthly payment comes out to be where it's only $25 or $30 a month. Now, we had a business in San Diego, kind of still do, for all this time that we've been traveling. So we had to find a place for monthly in San Diego. For us, that was almost $1,100 a month, which is kind of high for a monthly. Now, to live in San Diego, significantly cheaper. And that's where I say, I can understand if you live in California and the cost to rent something is so expensive, you can be I can live in an RV and not necessarily travel and keep my expense low. That's great. That just was not what we were looking for. So we we did that for parts of the year. We would pay for monthly, and a lot of times monthly places are only in the winter that you can get that discounted rate. In San Diego, we couldn't get that discounted rate, well, not at least by the beach where we were normally living. So we'd have to go inland sometimes if we wanted a monthly, and it was still pretty close in that 11 to 1200 range. Now, some RV parks are going to give you include electricity and water in that expense. There are some that will charge you, if you're paying for a monthly, that are going to charge you an additional, rarely for water, but usually electricity, they'll charge an additional. I know if you're really looking minimal, there are places in by Yuma, Arizona, that like 300 for a month. Those are, you know, again, if you're trying to make your cost of living really low, then that's great. I guess if you're a desert rat and you love riding quads out in the desert, then it could be kind of fun too. To me, that wouldn't have enough options for me. I think a common number I see is from 600 to 800 a month is very common throughout the US. So that gives you some starting points as far as monthly. Now, another way to do it, and a lot of full-timers do this, is they boondock. They camp for free outside of an RV park. There is a ton of RV or BLM land, Bureau of Land Management. There are a ton of places where you can camp for, sometimes they'll regulate it, especially National Forest. Also, there's a lot of places. Right here, I'll put a link to where to find free camping in the US. But you might be able to purely boondock. The big things with boondocking, though, is you're going to need either a generator or a good solar setup for your electricity. You're going to also have to think through how much water your holding tanks take. Now, you can get things to transfer, so when your holding tanks get full, you can fill them, you can dump them into a container, put them in the back of your truck, and go dump them. It's a great option. We don't do that in this everly. It's just, I feel like we have the money to spend. I'd rather just be a little bit more comfortable. Now, early on when we were in our Class C, we did it all the time. In fact, in my Class C, I guess I kind of baby this. A lot of times you have to go off-roading more to get to those BLMs. Sometimes it's only like a quarter of a mile off the main highway, so it really would be fine. It would be feasible for us. But I just kind of like to keep it all as nice as possible and clean. You know, sometimes if you're a BLM spot, you're camping in dirt. Like right now we're in these campgrounds, you can't see, where it's like all red dirt everywhere, and I just think, that my kids would just track dirt in nonstop. I would go crazy just telling them to like take off your shoes, clean up the floor. I don't like being that person, so I'd rather have that nice concrete slab, that yes, the blacktop, when they're running around barefoot, their feet get black, but it's just a little cleaner. The BLMs, so you just have to think through. In some ways, it's more fun. Like I said, on our Class C, we would do that way more often. The difference is with our Class C, we road trip type of travel. We don't stay put ever. Like, I think the longest we ever stayed put for 4 years in our Class C was like 4 days in one location. When I talk about which RV is best for you, I'm going to go into, it really depends on what type of traveler you are. Now we are travelers where I'd rather park in one spot for a week. I don't think I could sit still for an entire month anymore, but I'd like to sit still for a week in a place and just take my truck and go off and explore. But for 4 years, we had our Class C, and every day I wanted to go somewhere new hike, a new climb. So if I'm gonna have to unhitch or like undo my sewer and my water and everything else, I may as well just be like constantly moving. And so then it would take a different type of planning. I'd plan out like, okay, today we're going to go here, and then we're going to move to the next spot and the next spot, and we'd be moving at like 50 to 200 miles per day. We'd cover a lot of ground. That's why in 4 years we went from 80,000 miles to 150,000 miles. It's fun. It's a more fun, adventurous. You're goal driven. You're not necessarily trying to just sit back and chill. Okay. When you're traveling, if you want to cut your expenses down that way and move more often and find BLMs, like Walmart and rest areas are great. The other thing is, like, I knew how much water, like I could get it so that we could fill our filling water tank in our Class C, and I could make it so that would last us an entire week. And it was easy too if I needed to last time. there are a ton, you have apps that tell you a ton of places where you can dump your gray water, where you can refill. So literally sometimes we would say we'd be road tripping through Utah, whatever, and we'd go one destination to go hike, and then we'd sleep at the Walmart that night, and then we'd go to our next climbing destination, and then we'd either sleep at a rest area, or we'd be hiking somewhere else and be at a national forest. We'd stack those days. You're spending nothing on campgrounds, but then eventually you're like, ooh, well, I just need, everybody showers, I'm gonna run through all my water. And so what we would do is we'd literally get it, a lot of rest areas have dumps. You'd go into the rest area and you'd fill up your water, go park for a second, you'd heat up the water, everyone would shower, you pull back in and dump all your gray water, refill, and you're off for another 5 to 7 days. We did that a lot, and then we'd spend nothing on a campground, and we'd still be able to cook and clean, and if we wanted to do it more often, we could do it more often, but we would really just be having so much fun playing. Also solar showers. Sometimes we would, if we were in a warm location, just take solar showers, and that would be fine. It's kind of easy it's easier to find ways to fill water than to necessarily dump, but there are so many dumping places, and even if they cost $5 at a gas station, it's relatively cheap. So those are your options as far as campgrounds. You could go from spending $0 per month to something around $1,200, because when we were at Mission Bay in San Diego, that was $1,100, plus you had to pay for an extra car, so it was another like $150. You kind of have a wide range. I don't think, one more, Thousand Trails. Now, Thousand Trails is another really cheap way to do it because it's only $400 per year. The problem is they're only in certain locations does it really work. Like Florida probably works okay. Because I haven't been out in the East Coast, I don't know how nice the resorts are. I've heard they're nice. I can tell you personally that we've stayed at the Pio Pico one in San Diego, and it's absolutely the worst campground, I think, to stay at. So if you're in Southern California, I personally wouldn't recommend Thousand Trails. There's just not that many great campgrounds over there to stay in. Arizona has some. I haven't been there to tell you if they're great or not, but it is a cheap way. Here's the catch: for only $400 a year, is if you're at 1,000 Trails for 2 weeks, you have to be out of 1,000 Trails for 7 days, and then you can go back in for 2 weeks. Or you can stay unlimited in their system, meaning you can hop from one campground to another campground to another campground, as long as you're only in each one for no more than 4 nights. So that you could be really creative. Like, my brain would get kind of excited if I was in Florida and planning ahead and I knew there are a lot of 1,000 Trails. I could plan out a road trip where I'm like, okay, 4 days here, 4 days here, but that's just not what we're looking for right now. As far as gas and maintenance, gas is going to be really dependent on how you see yourself traveling. For us, like when we're in San Diego, I have the expense of Victor going to work, or it was actually more expensive in gas being in San Diego, because then I would drive to go surf, and if the surf wasn't good in PB, I'd have to drive all the way to Encinitas. And we have a diesel truck. Gas is so expensive in California. Now, currently, we're on a road trip with this beast, and to go from Polson down to St. George, it's a little under 1,000 miles. I know when I'm towing this, I'm getting under 15 miles, probably close to 15 miles per gallon, but not quite, probably closer to 12. So I'll take my totals. Figuring out your gas expense is easy. You're like, okay, well, I see myself, count up how many miles you'll be driving that month, and I'll take that number and I'll divide it by the number of miles that I think I'm going to be. So if I'm going to be driving 1,000 miles, divide it by 15 miles per gallon, and then I'll times it by what I think the average, like right now it's $2.75 for diesel pretty much everywhere in Montana, Utah, Idaho. If you're in San Diego or California, you're gonna have to look. I use Gas Buddy and just look at an area and look at what their current gas cost is. In our Class C, we actually get worse gas mileage. We're paying for regular gasoline though, so it's a little bit cheaper right now, but we only get 10 miles to the gallon. So I will try. I have worksheets for this. I should definitely add them. I should remember to add the worksheet, the link to the worksheets here, and how I calculate our expense when we're on a road trip. The big thing is, though, once we drop the trailer, we get over 15 miles to the gallon on our truck, so it makes it way more affordable in a lot of ways for us to travel with our truck and trailer than to travel with our Class C. Auto registration. So for a long time, we were still in California system. Our registration was insanely expensive. So then we switched over to, definitely put in a link for this one. We switched over to become residents of South Dakota. I have a very thorough blog on how to do it. If you decide to downsize to an RV, I can't highly recommend enough how amazing ChooseSD.com is for getting you set up with it, but our blog goes through all the details. Our registration, I want to say we had the trailer, we had our motorhome, we had our truck and our Jeep, 4 vehicles. I want to say it was less than $200. I should have known this before for the video, but I can't. It was about that. It was extremely cheap, and I think we were paying 3 times that at least in California, possibly 4 times. So that's much less. We use for RV insurance, we've always used Geico. The thing is though, Geico, because we are not full-time RVing anymore, you're gonna have to check. Geico doesn't always do full-time RVs. And then we use Foremost instead. So you can reach out to me if you need to know exactly which one. But our insurance was significantly less depending on which state. Actually, that part for full-time RVing with Foremost, I think the insurance was a little bit higher when we were considered South Dakota residents. Not a lot, but a little bit higher because they have something that San Diego doesn't have called weather. And so when it was in San Diego, the odds of that, it was different. So you've got 2 different, I would definitely get a quote from Geico, but then a lot of times Geico just sends you to Foremost. The insurance part is kind of I don't want to say a drag per se, but it's kind of that. It's just a weird system, right? They want to track you for everything. All right, so I have my list. I don't want to miss anything for you. All right, so besides, those are the things that are majorly different with RV, but you still have your regular expenses: cell phone, food, maybe entertainment, health insurance. So for us, okay, I think cell phone's pretty much the same, whether you're in an RV or not. The big difference is we needed a way to have Wi-Fi while we travel. And so we carry with us 2 hotspots. For us to get internet on the road, we have both of our hotspots happen to be grandfathered in. That one of them we've had for a long time. One of us, our dear friends, let us borrow that they've had for a long time. So between the 2 of them, we only spend a little over $100 to have unlimited data while we travel on 2 hotspots. Now, I'm going to tell you, as digital nomad, like Victor's working right now, it's frustrating because there are times when you get a good signal, even having 2 different, one's an AT&T, one's T-Mobile. Sometimes you have service and sometimes you don't. And that is definitely the hardest part for us, being purely digital now. I think they're doing weird things with the satellites, try to probably force us all onto a different network. I don't know. So cell phone is not going to change, but it might just shift, like what you're paying for your hard line at home. You might have to pay for just to have a hotspot. I do know, I'm going to save it for another video too. There is a new technology coming out for that I need to look more into. As far as health insurance and food, because I put those next to each other, because our food expense is probably insane compared to what yours is, but our health insurance is extremely low because we haven't been to the doctor. None of us have gone to a doctor in at least 5 years. Since we've lived in our RV, nobody's gone to a doctor except when we were in Europe and Victor almost lost his eye. I'm trying to remember before then. I honestly, I can't even remember. I mean, I had Tatiana, she's 10 now, at home. I'm trying to remember if we've been to a doctor since then. Anyways, but I spend a lot on food. Like, we buy really good food and I don't skimp on, I would say I don't really keep track of our food budget anymore, but like, because we do it in bulk, like I'll go and buy a pig and then we keep it in the freezer, and then I'll go and buy a cow and keep it in freezers. And so when we go shopping, a lot of times it's just for baking stuff, but it's always, organic almond flour, and I'll order like really good almond milk, and we'll buy produce most days. And so my food expense is probably not what yours is, but on the flip side, yours, maybe you could shift, you really could turn around your health. Victor and I always say this to people all the time, 3 months, you could completely change your health with the right food and nutrition and exercise in 3 months. So if you're thinking of going into an RV, maybe now's the time to make that shift and make your health insurance, you're not so dependent on it, and you just have to spend a little bit more in food, and that's everybody's personal choice. For entertainment, we're kind of limited. I let the kids, I think, the Netflix, it's Cabal and stuff, but every so often I'll like, oh, you can have a month of Netflix and splurge. But we don't have a lot of those type of expenses because we don't, what I find is we need the Wi-Fi for our work. And so if they have Netflix, they're always wanting to be on it. So when we do have it, I tell them, okay, you got to download your stuff when we're not going to be needing to work, because otherwise it's like, who's on the Wi-Fi again? It doesn't work. I can't do my clients. So those are pretty minimal. And those lead up to, how did we save up? I mean, how did we make it so that we went to Europe for 6 months? We traveled to Bali for a month, New Zealand for a month, Hawaii for a month, multiple times Hawaii for a month. Like, what did it take to save up and do this? These are my tips and tricks for how we saved up so much money to pay cash for everything, and really basically get to live intentionally. And so in the end, when we do have to make money, it's purely like making money for food, or making money like, oh wow, we made extra this month, let's have a really nice campground for this month. Or, okay, well, we didn't make as much as money, we make much money this month, I guess we're gonna have to work a little harder, and let's just go boondock free camp for this month. So number one is, I first started by cutting any expenses in my house. I cut down, like little things like not running a dishwasher because that was more electricity, doing less laundry. That's a good one too. When you are living in an RV, you also have laundromat expenses, which can be expensive. In a couple episodes ago, I talked about we got a Splendid, I think it's called, washer dryer. That is huge. I mean, I think from just a happiness standpoint, having my own washer dryer in an RV is so great. It's even more great if you have a husband who does all the laundry, because you just don't think about doing laundry. And so it's even better because the clothes just magically appear clean in my drawer every day. Thank you. But it's just nice not having that expense. Like, I hated having to constantly like, oh my gosh, another $10 for laundry over and over. I would say probably spent $60 a month on laundry, maybe a little bit more when we didn't have that. So in a house, we started cutting back by not doing laundry as much, like turning lights off. You sound like your dad, right? Walking around, turn the lights off. I can tell you now that we have this house in Polson, I can't stand how expensive utilities are, because I'm so used to living in an RV, not having to pay for utilities. Gas, like we started being way more intentional about where we went. It wasn't like, oh, I'm bored, let me just run up to Target and buy stuff that I don't need. No, we are way more intentional about like bulking up our lists of our grocery list and our shopping list and the things we needed, and only doing them one day. Now, this is a key thing for even when you're traveling. If you don't go to the grocery stores often, you tend to spend less. And so the other one is, we try to use up everything. So I'll try, if we're trying to budget, I'll go and buy everything I need for at least a week, maybe even 10 days, and we use up everything. When we're in a Class C, I was so good about this. Like, I'd go to Trader Joe's and it would last us 3 weeks, and we'd get to the point where at the end I would make up these like random cookies with like the little bit of frozen butter I had left and flour and some chocolate chips. and then we go hiking with them, because if you can use up everything in your pantry and really stretch it, you will save hundreds of dollars a month. Okay. So we would do that. Like, I cut out Costco was the first thing to go. As soon as I cut out Costco, I saved so much money. And I know, what, Robyn, but Costco, it's bulk, it's more affordable. Yeah, but you add things to your cart that you wouldn't normally need. And I personally just think I save so much more money if I don't go to Costco. Flip side, like right now, because Walmart's the only place I can shop, I feel like, without a mask, is I tend to go there more often. And so I see it, because we're not on so much of a budget. I see us spending out way more than we used to, because I'm like, oh, well, let's run into Walmart and get some more solid stuff. And oh, why not throw in this and throw in another movie and so you put things in your cart every time you go. So if you can cut off the number of times you go, not only are you saving in what you're spending, but you're saving in gas. Okay. Pay off all your debt. Like, that was one of the first ones. Like we said, I didn't let it reaccumulate. I made sure that we are always paying off everything. And then I even went to like cash envelopes. I know cash, this might only be valid for the next 2 or 3 months, but I would put envelopes, I would set aside at the beginning of the month, take cash and be like, okay, this much is for this is for this, and allot it. And it kept me on budget. We always save first. Like, I knew I'm going to get to my number one thing for making this work. And because of that number one thing that I had, I always put money towards that first. And we rarely ate out anyways. So that was kind of easy, but we cut out, we don't eat out. And that's kind of the no-brainer. Making your kids aware of needs versus wants helped a lot, because they were excited to like, hey, we're gonna go on a road trip. So they didn't ask for a lot of things. And even Tatiana now is my one kid who's the most materialistic, and who loves, oh, can I have this? Can I have that? I just have to make her aware of when she does get things, like, hey, did this really bring you joy? Did you enjoy it? And some of them are yes. And sometimes it's like she realizes after, like, yeah, I guess I just got caught up in like, oh, I want this, but it's not really, like, it seems more exciting than it is. And so making your kids a little bit more self-accountable for those things definitely help. I'd put everything into a spreadsheet also and keep track of it. And so that brings me to my number one way to make something like this happen for yourself is that, yes, you can cut back. Yes, you can budget more. Yes, you can track every single number. And there's absolutely a time and place for that. But what you really need to do is manifest it in the proactive sense. And I didn't really realize how much I already did this until I was taking this manifestation course, and they were talking about it. I'm like, ooh, I used to do this so much, and then maybe I lost a little bit of it, but I'm always visualizing how I want to spend the money before I make the money. Meaning, before we even moved into an RV, I remember thinking like, oh, I see myself going on this road trip. I would plan out like, oh, I want to go here, here, and here. And I've kept that all these years. I've told you guys, I always write down where I want to go, whether it's this year, whether it's next year. It's not like, oh, in 30 years when I retire. I mean, no. It's like, where am I going to be going soon? Maybe it's not this year per se. Like, I mean, Patagonia would be really nice, but it's not feasible with the airlines, how they are and stuff. So it's having multiple plans like that, but you visualize it. When I have blank amount of money, like for us, I'm like, oh, when I have blank amount of money, I'm going to get that fifth wheel that has the side patio and is white on the inside, so I can take pictures and put them on Instagram and not be embarrassed that the picture doesn't look good. Visualizing to exact details. And Victor, it's been a hard thing because he doesn't do that. I always ask him like, okay, well, for money, what do you because he had this more constraint mindset of like scarcity. I'm never gonna have enough money, but also didn't have a place where he saw himself spending it. So he would end up just working all the time, but not necessarily, it's almost like you're chasing your tail, not necessarily knowing why. And so it took a long time. It still takes a long time for him to sit there, and I'm like, okay, well, he doesn't really like our truck since he doesn't get to drive it. What does that truck look like that you want to drive? What is that truck? I want you to visualize hitching up that truck to that trailer that I want, because he doesn't really care about the trailer, he'll keep this one. Okay, what does that truck look like? Feel it, visualize it, like think about all the details of it. I can tell you when we went to Europe, it was because I started visualizing. Gabi made a report and talked about all these places in Europe. I had no interest in Europe. And then I started visualizing, like, ooh, it'd be fun to be walking in that forest. It would be like in the Black Forest of Bavarian hills in Germany. I'm like, ooh, that would be nice. And you start visualizing, oh, I want to surf off the coast of Ireland. Wow, it's probably so cold. It is so cold. But wow, to like sit there and like stare off at the green hillside and be like, yeah, I'm surfing in Ireland, or I'm surfing in Bali. And every single detail of that you can visualize, that you can picture what that future self is doing, what it feels like, how you're spending that money, is the biggest way, my biggest secret to achieving these things. It's not so much in like, how frugal can I be? It's about how much do I want that thing that I'm going to be frugal for, okay? So cost to live in an RV can be really, real huge range, okay? I mean, if anything, like I look at it now, I'm like, I want to make it so a cost to live in an RV is cost me, you know, thousands of dollars, because I know I want to be putting a really nice RV in an amazing campground, hitched up, and go drive a really nice truck anywhere I go. But I mean, I like the setup too, so it's good. But it's just keep thinking, and let me know if you have any questions. Tomorrow we're going to come back and I'll try to plan it so Victor's involved more in this one, and we'll talk about which RV is right for you, or how to choose what RV, because it really does make a difference if you pick an A or a Class C or a fifth wheel or a travel trailer or a van or car camping in a tent. I've had many people that are in their 60s message me and say, you know what, I'm 6 years old and I just said I gotta go live my life and I don't have money for a RV right now, so I threw a tent in my car and I'm seeing the world and I'm super happy. So there are so many different ways to do this, and nothing's permanent, right? So you can always start on with one and then change it up along the way. All right, thanks guys.